The most critical choke point on Earth is just 21 miles wide, 2 navigable shipping lanes, each barely 2 miles across. Iran to the north, Oman and the UAE to the south. Every day, 20 million barrels of oil pass through this corridor, 25% of all seaborne crude, nearly $500 billion in annual energy trade, funneled through a gap you could cross in under 30 minutes. In March 2026, Iran's Revolutionary Guard closed it, not restricted, not delayed, closed, and the U.S. Navy would learn that reopening it required something no warship alone could provide. At its narrowest, the Strait of Hormuz stretches just 21 miles across, a distance so tight that a container ship leaving the Gulf can see the mountains of Iran to port and the shores of Oman to starboard in a single glance. Yet only 4 miles of this span are truly navigable, 2 inbound lanes and 2 outbound lanes, each 2 miles wide, separated by a buffer zone. The rest is a maze of reefs, shoals, and shallow banks, impassable for deep draft tankers. This is not an open sea, but a bottleneck engineered by geography and maintained by international agreement. Every day before the crisis, around 20 million barrels of oil, 1 out of every 5 consumed worldwide, moved through these narrow lanes. That is the combined daily output of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and the United Arab Emirates, funneled through a corridor smaller than the distance between Manhattan and Brooklyn. The U.S. Energy Information Administration tracked these flows at roughly 20 to 21 million barrels per day in 2024 and 2025, with crude, condensate, and LNG shipments stacked bow to stern. No alternate maritime route exists for Gulf oil beyond a handful of overland pipelines, which together can handle barely a quarter of the normal flow. The financial scale is staggering. Nearly $500 billion in annual energy trade, petroleum, gas, and refined products relies on these 2 slender lanes. A single day's closure traps over 50 supertankers and hundreds of smaller vessels on either side with nowhere to go. The strait is less a gateway than a pressure valve for the global economy, and when it shuts, the consequences ripple far beyond the Gulf. Here, a single mine, a grounded ship, or a military standoff can choke off 1/5 of the world's energy supply in hours. March 4th, 2026. At 0600 hours Gulf Standard Time, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a broadcast on all maritime frequencies. The Strait of Hormuz was now off limits to foreign shipping. No warnings, no grace period. Within minutes, automatic identification system signals from nearly 150 vessels froze in place, from very large crude carriers loaded with Saudi crude to liquefied natural gas carriers outbound from Ras Laffan. Supertankers that had cleared the strait before dawn kept moving, but everything behind them halted, some anchored, others drifting, all awaiting orders that never came. The silence was absolute. No tugs moved between the lanes. No pilot boats shuttled to the Omani side. The 4-mile-wide corridor, once a ceaseless line of hulls and wakes, became a static grid of immobilized ships. For the first time in decades, not a single commercial vessel transited from the Gulf to the open ocean. On the Iranian side, IRGC patrol boats wove through the traffic jam, broadcasting threats and warning that any unauthorized movement would be treated as hostile. By midday, the backlog stretched from the approaches off Bandar Abbas to the anchorage at Fujairah. Oil terminals across the Gulf began invoking force majeure. In the space of a few hours, the world's busiest energy choke point was not delayed, not restricted. It was closed. The difference was total. The strait had become a maritime dead zone, enforced not by distant threats, but by the immediate presence and authority of IRGC. The question was no longer how long ships would wait, but how and if the strait could be reopened at all. Oil prices did not wait for official statements. Within hours of the IRGC's broadcast, Brent crude futures jumped over 10%, breaching the $100 per barrel mark for the first time in nearly 2 years. The surge was not limited to oil. Natural gas contracts in Europe and Asia spiked as well, with LNG spot prices doubling for immediate delivery. Ship owners and cargo insurers, facing a corridor now declared a war zone, hiked premiums overnight, some by as much as 400%. The cost to charter a supertanker from Ras Tanura to Rotterdam soared past $15 million, even as most vessels remained anchored, unable to move. Economists described a textbook supply shock, but the numbers on screen felt anything but abstract. In Karachi, fuel rationing began as early as March 5th. Manila announced a 4-day workweek to conserve power. Airlines in Singapore and Seoul scrambled to hedge jet fuel contracts, while refiners in India and Japan warned of forced shutdowns if crude deliveries did not resume within days. Stock indices from Frankfurt to Tokyo shed trillions in market value in the week that followed, with energy and shipping shares swinging wildly and central banks bracing for inflationary aftershocks. Political pressure mounted at a pace that outstripped even the price charts. Gulf states, watching their main economic artery severed, called emergency summits. European leaders demanded immediate United States intervention, while Asian importers sent urgent envoys to Washington. The world's most vital energy corridor was not just closed, it had become the epicenter of a global economic crisis, with every hour of paralysis compounding the fallout. Surface escorts have always been the default answer for threatened shipping lanes. Stack destroyers and cruisers bow to stern, keep air cover overhead, and push the convoy through. That formula worked, at least on paper, in the North Atlantic and again in the Gulf during the 1980s tanker war. But the Strait of Hormuz in 2026 is not the open ocean, and the escort solution is an illusion. In narrow-mined waters, the lead ship is not a shield. It is a target. History offers proof. During the tanker war, United States and British warships escorted reflagged tankers through Iranian threats. But even then, mines crippled the USS Samuel B. Roberts and nearly sank the Bridgeton, a Kuwaiti tanker, despite full naval protection. The lesson is brutal. No matter how many destroyers or carriers you send, a single influence mine or bottom mine, cheap, silent, and invisible, can halt a billion-dollar warship in its tracks. Mines do not care about flags or firepower. Unlike pirates or missile boats, they cannot be intimidated or shot down. Every mile swept is a mile exposed, and minesweepers themselves crawl at 5 knots. Sitting ducks for shore-launched missiles, drones, and swarms of fast boats. This is the minesweeper's dilemma. You cannot protect the escorts without clearing the mines, and you cannot clear the mines without exposing the sweepers. In Hormuz, brute naval force is not enough. The strait is closed, not by the absence of ships, but by a threat that turns every passage into a calculated risk. Iran's arsenal of naval mines turns the Strait of Hormuz into a trap with no quick way out. Estimates from U.S. defense analysts put the inventory between 2,000 and 6,000 mines, enough to saturate every mile of those narrow lanes several times over. The threat is not just in numbers, but in variety. 4 distinct classes: contact, influence, bottom, and rising mines, wait below the surface. Contact mines, some dating back to the tanker war, can be laid by speedboats in minutes. Influence mines, like the Mahan 3, respond to magnetic or acoustic signatures and can be triggered by the passage of a single tanker or warship. Bottom mines, including the Mahan 7, lurk in the shallow approaches, almost invisible to sonar. Rising mines, some imported from China and Russia, launch upward on command, targeting hulls from below. Deployment is fast and flexible. Small IRGC boats, each carrying 2 or 3 mines, can reseed cleared lanes under cover of darkness or bad weather. Submarines, especially the Kilo class, lay more advanced types, while frogmen and helicopters add mines in water too shallow for ships. Even after a channel is swept, there is no guarantee it stays clear for more than a few hours. Each attempt to open a path invites fresh danger. U.S. Navy mine countermeasure vessels, already in short supply, crawl at 5 knots, exposed to missile, drone, and swarm boat attacks from the shore. Clearing even a single 2-mile channel could take days or weeks, and every hour gives Iran another chance to reseed the field. The mechanical reality is simple. As long as the IRGC can reach the water, the strait remains closed. No number of escorts or airstrikes can change that without first securing the coastline. Airstrikes alone cannot break the hold Iran maintains over the Strait of Hormuz. In the aftermath of repeated U.S. and Israeli sorties, the landscape along the Iranian coast and its offshore islands tells a different story than expected. Larak, Keshem, and Abu Musa, each transformed over years into hardened military outposts, remain operational even after waves of precision-guided bombs. Satellite analysis and intercepted communications confirm that beneath the shattered surface, reinforced bunkers and underground missile silos survive, shielded by layers of concrete and bedrock. IRGC coastal commanders, many trained in underground warfare since the 2010s, direct their batteries from deep within these shelters. On Larak Island, launch crews reload Nor and Gutter anti-ship missiles in tunnels carved directly into the limestone, emerging only to fire and vanish again. Mobile launchers, camouflaged and constantly shifting locations, complicate targeting for any follow-up strike. Even after more than 11,000 munitions dropped in the first 2 weeks of the campaign, U.S. intelligence assesses that more than half of Iran's shore-based missile capacity remains intact. Drones and cruise missiles continue to launch from hidden portals, threatening any vessel that dares approach the swept channels. The resilience of these island fortresses exposes the limit of AIR power in a confined battle space. Every attempt to suppress missile fire from above is met with new launches from fresh positions. As long as these fortified islands and coastal batteries endure, the strait remains closed. Not by the absence of ships, but by the certainty that any move into the corridor will be met with fire from a shoreline that cannot be silenced by airstrikes alone. USS Tripoli, designated LLHA-7, serves as the spearhead for any attempt to break the deadlock at Hormuz. Unlike traditional carriers, Tripoli is built as an aviation-optimized assault ship, able to launch a surge of 35B Lightning II aircraft, M522 Ospreys, and CH-53K heavy-lift helicopters from its expansive flight deck. With a full complement, Tripoli embarks the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, over 2,200 Marines, plus aircrew and support, swelling the ship's population to nearly 5,000. This is not just a floating airfield, but a mobile launch pad for vertical assault. In the opening hours of a contested entry, Tripoli's aviation assets can insert marine rifle companies far beyond the reach of mines and shore batteries, landing on islands or hostile coastlines in minutes instead of hours. Ospreys and helicopters fan out in coordinated waves, each carrying squads, supplies, and weapons directly over the minefields that paralyze surface ships. Yet air insertion alone cannot seize and hold ground indefinitely. The next phase hinges on the arrival of surface connectors, landing craft and hovercraft that can deliver heavy vehicles, logistics, and reinforcements to secure the beachhead and support mine-clearing teams ashore. USS Boxer, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, answers the question of how heavy firepower and logistics reach a hostile shore when mines and missiles choke the surface. The ship's well deck is a cavernous bay built to launch and recover landing craft, most critically the LCAC, Landing Craft Air Cushion. Each LCAC can carry up to 75 tons of cargo, an M1A1 Abrams tank, 2 AAV-7 amphibious assault vehicles, or dozens of pallets of ammunition and fuel. Boxer can operate 3 LCACs at once, putting a reinforced company and its vehicles ashore in under an hour, even on a mined or contested beach. This is not theoretical. The well-deck's design allows for rapid, repeated sorties, sustaining a flow of armor, engineers, and supplies from ship to shore while aviation assets provide cover overhead. Unlike Tripoli's focus on vertical insertion, Boxer brings the mass and weight needed for a ground fight. Bulldozers to clear obstacles, armored vehicles to break through, and logistics trucks to keep Marines supplied for days. The surface connector role is what completes the capability pair. Vertical assault seizes the initial foothold, but it is Boxer's landing craft that transform a beachhead into a sustainable lodgment, paving the way for a full Marine Air-Ground Task Force to form up and push inland. The Marine Air-Ground Task Force, known as MAGTF, is the U.S. military's answer to the kind of layered, asymmetric threat that now defines the Strait of Hormuz. Unlike single-service formations, a MAGTF is a self-contained, integrated force built around 4 essential elements. At its core is the command element, responsible for synchronizing every operation across land, sea, and air. The ground combat element, made up of Marine infantry, armor, and engineers, is trained to seize and hold terrain under fire. The aviation combat element brings F-35B jets, MV-22 Ospreys, AH-1Z Vipers, and CH-53K heavy-lift helicopters, aircraft that can strike, transport, and supply Marines beyond the reach of mines or coastal batteries. The logistics combat element sustains the fight, delivering fuel, ammunition, and medical support under combat conditions. This structure allows a Marine Expeditionary Unit commander to plan and execute amphibious assaults, island seizures, and rapid response missions with a single chain of command. In the Strait of Hormuz, only a force built on this doctrine can coordinate the seizure of key islands, protect mine clearing teams, and maintain a continuous flow of reinforcements and supplies, all while exposed to missile fire and drone attacks. MAGTF doctrine is not theory. It is the blueprint for breaking a blockade enforced by mines, missiles, and fortified shorelines. Breaking the blockade begins with a 4-pronged assault, each step tightly linked to the next. Marines first storm the fortified islands, Larak, Keshem, and Abu Musa, using helicopters and landing craft. Clearing these strongholds means rooting out missile teams, drone operators, and mine layers hidden in reinforced bunkers. Every island must be secured, block by block, to stop Iran from reseeding mines or firing anti-ship missiles into the lanes. Next, Navy EOD teams, shielded by armored Marines, move in to sweep minefields that may contain thousands of contact mines, influence mines, and bottom mines, some freshly laid just hours before. Under fire and drone threat, they advance slowly. Even in ideal conditions, clearing a single 2-mile channel can take 7 to 30 days, depending on mine density and sophistication. Interdiction teams then hunt IRGC fastboats and submarines, racing to keep cleared waters open. The pace is unrelenting, with no guarantee a swept lane stays safe for long. Finally, Marines seize coastal depots, radar sites, and communications hubs, securing the lifeline for supplies and reinforcements. Every phase exposes the force to new risks, with costs measured in days, casualties, and material. March 24th, 2026. A 15-point diplomatic proposal, relayed through Pakistani intermediaries, arrives in Tehran. The plan offers phased sanctions relief, limited oil exports, and a monitored withdrawal of U.S. forces from Gulf staging areas in exchange for a verified reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials meet through the night in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. By dawn, the answer is delivered: rejection. Tehran's statement, broadcast on state media, declares the strait will remain closed until all foreign military presence is removed from the region. Within hours, Iran's Supreme National Security Council replaces the commander of the IRGC Navy, signaling a hardening stance. The collapse of talks leaves no off-ramp. Shipping remains paralyzed, with over 3,000 vessels stranded or rerouted, and global stockpiles of crude and LNG falling by the day. Insurance premiums spike again as rumors of new minefields circulate among ship owners. Gulf states face mounting export shortfalls, with daily losses exceeding $1.2 billion in oil revenue alone. With diplomacy exhausted, the calculus shifts. Every military planner now faces the same question: not whether the strait can be forced open, but what price will be paid, measured in casualties, ships, and the stability of the global economy. Right now, over 20 million barrels of oil per day remain trapped behind a closed strait, despite 2 carrier strike groups and 4,000 Marines aboard USS Boxer and USS Tripoli. The question isn't whether the U.S. can reopen Hormuz, but whether the world is ready for the cost in lives, ships, and stability. What price would you pay to turn the tide?